Okay, I'm going to call the Wilmington City Council special joint session meeting with the Planning Commission this Monday, October the 6th, 2025, into order. And at this time, I am going to have a roll call. Mayor Pro Tem, are you here? Okay, Councilmember Rivenbark, are you here? Yes, sir. Councilmember Spears, are you here?
Unfortunate.
Councilmember Waddell, are you here? Councilmember Andrews, are you here? Councilmember Joyner, are you here? Here. And the chair is here. So all of us are here and accounted for. Mr. Lennon, here you go.
I'd like to call the joint City Council Planning Commission meeting to order as well on behalf of the Planning Commission. Commissioner Pollock? Yes. Commissioner Adams? Here. Commissioner Collier?
Here. Here.
Commissioner Kofer has a personal absence. Commissioner Jones? Here. And Commissioner Woodruff?
Here.
Okay. So the work session discussion topics are included in this agenda that we have before us. The role of the commission, the Greater Downtown Plan, the upcoming Land Development Code, or LDC amendments, the Create Wilmington Comprehensive Plan update, and other topics of interest between the council and the commission. So I'm going to turn this over to Linda, because you're looking at me, so I think I'm going to turn it over to you and talk about the role of the commission. And I know that we have our city attorney here that will correct us if we're veering off base or if we got it wrong.
Good morning, everyone. Mayor Pro Tem, Chairman Lennon, and Vice Chairman Adams. Thank you for coming together this morning for this joint meeting. In terms of the role of the commission, that's actually something I'm going to turn over to our commission members, because when we sat down with the previous chair to identify agenda topics, that was something that came up. And so I'm going to I'll let them speak for themselves in terms of the conversation they want to have. As you know, you do receive recommendations from the commission on all rezoning applications, street closures, and other land use applications, as well as land development code amendments. The commission is also integral in our long-range planning efforts, and so that's one of the things that we can update you on this morning after you get through some of your other discussion items. And with that, I'll turn it over to our commission members.
May I jump in real quick before that gets started? This format is not new. We used to practice this on a regular basis in years gone by. And there's been one instance, in I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, where the commission members at that time were a little bit, I don't know what went down, but there was a little bit of gray area that we needed to get clear on as to exactly what the role of the commission was. And even there were some members on council that weren't really clear as to what their mission was, and that was really the impetus. I've been asking for this meeting since all of 2025, and here we are today in October. So I hope that there is some good back and forth with the commission members as to what they think it should be, and how that can align with what we expect, because I think that there's more on the plate of the Planning Commission than what we're seeing merely, not more so than just vetting projects before we get them, the land development code. So with that said, have at it.
Not sure how to follow that, but I appreciate it. And I would say, I'll just start from my perspective. I've always considered my service here as an advisory capacity, to make a recommendation to approve or deny particular projects for council to ultimately vote on. I think the other thing Linda touched on, where I think the commission can be of benefit, are in some of the long-range planning items, and general zoning questions that come up within the city, really because we're sort of the front line, so to speak. Typically 200 people show up in front of us before they show up in front of you. So we know kind of where some of the issues are, and can help with council to that end. By the same token, I appreciate these meetings because it's great to get feedback from council as to sort of what direction you all feel the city is heading in, particularly when it comes to zoning and land use.
Well, I've said it before, and I tell everybody that I run into when the subject of zoning and our meetings come up. I've always been you guys are, and we're the tip of the spear because, you know, it stops with us. But I don't know what we would do if it were not for the Planning Commission vetting those things. I mean, y'all kind of trim the fat or add to it or what have you before we get it, and that's extremely valuable. But there's more to the Planning Commission, in my opinion, as it has been in the past, than just vetting projects twice a month and sending them to us. And I don't know if that's something that this commission feels like that they would like to have more, a better seat at the table, if you will, or just you're satisfied with, you think that's just what the commission's role is just vetting projects before they get to council.
Commissioner Pollock?
Yeah, to play off of that, you know, and I'm the one that kind of drove this topic, so as Linda said, you know, that's how we got here. And I focus really on you know, some of the duties are pretty straightforward, but it's long-range plans and policies, and I'll personalize it, so, you know, all cards on the table. You know, after spending, you know, 40 years doing strategic planning, financial planning, long-range planning, operational planning, not just domestically, but for customers, 55 countries across here. I just want to take those skills and see if I can help the city, because I'm going to be very honest. I love being on this commission. This is very, very interesting to me. I feel like I'm actually contributing to the direction of the city. But it's the bigger mission is, and I think everybody that's around the table is, nobody's here, whether it's members of the council, members of the commission, or members of the staff in the back, nobody's here because they got a ton of spare time. Everybody's here because they want Wilmington to look the best it possibly can be. And I think, you know, with that as you know, something that binds us all together, you know, I for one would, you know, if there's a greater role that the commission can play in those planning efforts, or even as an individual, happy to do it. Sign me up. Okay, so that's kind of, I'm kind of where, you know, Councilman Rivenbark is. I just think there's maybe potentially more things from a planning, and I take the word planning and I triple underline it. I mean, that's, you know, that is key, because if we don't plan our work, we don't have any work to go execute on. And if we're not bound by common objectives and measurable objectives, then the rest is interesting, but it's, you know, it's academic at best. So that's just me as an individual.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams?
Well, I think for me, as a design professional, looking at things that are maybe qualitative in terms of our environment is as important as numbers-based things like density. I say a lot in our meetings and our operations that design matters, and a lot of times the guardrails around how, you know, for instance, we implement density, where we implement density, is as important as doing it or not. So for me, people are coming here, right? If we didn't have some of these issues that we have as a city, when we would be kind of dying on the vine, right? And that's a problem that none of us want. So I think happily embracing some of these challenges is something that we should all think about. But again, I approach sort of my role personally on the committee as qualitative, and I talk about guardrails a lot of times, and we have to be careful that sometimes just because we can do something when it comes to planning or development doesn't always mean we should do it maybe in that particular way.
Commissioner Woodruff?
have anything to add at this point, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Collier?
Well, I think as Commissioner Lennon said, we are an advisory board. We know that we are there to vet the projects, make sure that they meet the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. Danny is a great addition to the Planning Commission because he does bring that design element, the architectural element to it that myself as an engineer, I live in boxes, and I want to make sure that I have another person there that's giving me advice on the design itself. We do need to make sure that, as Danny mentioned, the guardrails. I like the guardrails because the guardrails are the code, and they are the parts that each project must live up to. And that's what we want to give to you guys is, does it meet it or doesn't it meet it? And that should be what our recommendation is based on. But design is the other side of it. I think where we add in maybe it's extra conditions on a conditional district rezoning. It could be vetting the traffic study, having everything delayed some, so there's some more information brought to the table. But I still think the commission's main goal is to support the council and give the council the information they need to make the decisions, because ultimately it is the commission, the council's decision, and we want to make sure you have the best information available. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Charlie, I like your word vetting. I think we do the vetting, and I see, when you look at the whole process, a lot of times the client or presenter will come back with ideas that we've expressed that y'all may not have heard, or but they do a lot of time listen, and I think that's another role of ours. I like the experience that we've got on the commission. Like Danny said, it's helpful to have people who think differently on there, and I value the staff and their opinion, so that's.
Well, as a chair of the appointments committee and having been on it for, gosh, the mayor's had me on there for quite a while, Luke and Celeste, we are very deliberate. We treat all of our boards and commissions with a great deal of pride and put people on there that want to serve and that we feel will do a good job. Planning Commission is I don't want to be unequal, but it's a little, it's so important. And as a result of that, how we perceive that, we're very deliberate in who we put on there. We have lots of applications, and we don't just pick a name out because they're popular or whatever, and you can look at yourselves and look at the talents that you just alluded to, and that is of utmost importance to us. And you could put somebody on there, the learning curve is quite a bit, who wouldn't know anything about the ordinances or our development ordinances, what have you, and it would be a little detriment to the overall product. But yeah, I've read your minutes, and I've seen where people have come down there with this, and after you all have gone through the project, they leave and come back, and it's better. Does that mean that, there's been a many instance over my 24 years down here that the staff would recommend approval, Planning Commission would go another way, and we'd go another way. It happens. That's the beauty of our form of government. But don't ever think for a minute that what you all say and do, along with the staff recommendation and Planning Commission recommendation, that it's not sacrosanct with me. It's extremely important, and I know what we'd do without you. But if you all feel like that is the bulk of what your job is and everything, I'm fine with that. But I just wanted to make sure that if you all felt like there was another layer of what you could be doing other than just those 2 meetings and all the other stuff that people think that us council people have 2 meetings a month and that's it, and I know better. But if you all felt like that you were not being included, or if you could had more to offer as far as planning, not just the Planning Commission meetings, then that's important too, and I'd sure be interested in hearing that and moving forward with that.
I know it's an item on our agenda, but I thought it'd be prudent to bring up in this kind of initial conversation. Probably my first 2 years in office, we got pretty regular code cleanups from staff that I think were vetted by your body and then came to us. I found those really refreshing good conversation, ultimately moving things in the right direction and cleaning up little inconsistencies. I realize a lot of that was due to the fact that it was a new code and did require and necessitate some of that cleanup. I wonder if you all think it would be beneficial to have kind of a regular, consistent strategic review of the land development code to continually update, have cleanups. I mean, just as a for instance, the tree ordinance is under a lot of scrutiny right now. I talked to people who are professionals in various industries. I talked to folks who are not professionals in various industries. All of them say, hey, there's a problem with our tree ordinance, the mitigation fees, and there's some of the incentives are maybe not aligned with the outcomes that we're trying to get. So really just kind of open discussion. Do you think that would be something that would be prudent and that your body would welcome to, continually review those items?
What you just stated, I think it comes under the guise of continuous improvement, and I would expand what you just said to not just code cleanup and looking at that, but also some of the things I know we've talked about amongst ourselves over the past month or so is looking at processes that we have today. So, and is there, not everything can be an A priority. Does that make sense? And so my opinion is, and I think with the talent that we have on this commission, that's probably something that we ought to do and work hand in glove with Linda's team and Brian, because there's got to be some ways to simplify, for people that come in front of us to come to you. But I think the code cleanup that you specifically asked about, and Linda, please keep me honest here, as we have worked with the staff over the last couple of years, and you're right, that's been the result of, was it December of 21 was we launched the new, code, new land use codes, and there was a massive effort, and appropriately so, to let's go back on a quarterly basis or on a whatever periodic basis to make sure that all makes sense. And again, I give Linda and Brian a lot of credit because they would come in to our meetings with, with lists this long, and you kind of, you glaze, but it was the right thing to do. And I think they keep looking from time to time. And so I think that's an ongoing effort, and it probably always should be. But I would personally add process to your comments as well. But Linda, I would ask you to jump in.
And I'm going to ask Dylan to actually pull up some slides.
Oh. Segue.
It was, We're going to jump around here. Dylan, if you can go to the LDC amendment section. Sorry. Okay. So as Councilman Waddell mentioned, after the adoption of the Land Development Code and when it became effective in December of 2021, staff underwent a concentrated effort to, on a quarterly basis, bring you those corrections, because when you're dealing with a new document of that size, you're going to find mistakes and errors. And so that's really what you saw those first few years, was every quarter staff going through and saying, okay, here are the typos, here are the places we made mistakes. And quite frankly, in some cases, now that we're implementing some of these regulations, we need to go back and take a look at them and make adjustments. So one thing I want to assure you is that is still happening. You're not seeing the quarterly amendment packages because we've moved past that, but evaluating the code is something that we do on a continuous basis. So just to kind of let you know what is in the pipeline for you, the Planning Commission at their October meeting last week reviewed 2 proposed amendments. One was initiated by staff, and it's to create a food bank use. I'm sure everyone remembers the Nourish NC that came forward, and that was a change that we had made as part of the rewrite, where we took social service uses, and because most of them were office-based, created them as an office use. Well, the reality is food banks are a very important social service use that do not fit into an office use. So we are coming back with an amendment for you to create a food bank use to allow those uses to be closer to neighborhoods where people who need those services can access them. The second amendment you have coming forward deals with the R3 district. This is an applicant-initiated amendment. We do accept applications 4 times a year from applicants outside of city staff to do amendments. And so those are 2 hearings that you'll be hearing at your November 5th meeting. In terms of LDC maintenance, We are still finding cleanup items. It's just not enough for us to do this on a quarterly basis, but we are planning in the spring to bring you some cleanup items. So be prepared for that. Staff has been maintaining a list of items that we'll be bringing forward. Another item that we're looking at for the winter of 2026 deals with conditional districts, and I will let our chair speak to this a little bit, but I know that there's a level of frustration with conditional districts when you have businesses that are successful and then they are limited to the footprint that was on the site plan, and they can't just expand. They're doing great, but they have to come back and go through the entire rezoning process. And that is something, our hands are somewhat tied by statute with that. But some of the things that we've talked about at a staff level are encouraging applicants to think about their success and their future plans as they're going through that process. So while they may want to build a 5,000 square foot building today, if you are wildly successful, what does that expansion look like, and include it in your district up front. One of the other things that we're looking at is changing, and I'm going to let Brian jump into this in a couple of slides, but also providing some flexibility on the administrative modification side, whereby the council can authorize staff to approve increases in square footage up to a certain percentage, so that if somebody's successful, they don't have to come back to you and go through that, process of the entire rezoning. The tree ordinance, as you brought up, we've heard a lot of comments on that, and this is something that we see as being really a partnership, not only with staff and the commission, but also with the Alliance for Cape Fear Trees, that is putting out a white paper called Code and Canopy. They've been doing a lot of research, looking at communities across the state to see what best practices are and identifying some areas that they think could be improved. And we also recognize we need to work with the development community. So, for example, we've already had one idea come up regarding our critical root zone. As part of the code update, we expanded that because it doesn't make, for us, preserving trees also means preserving their ability to thrive and survive. But in some cases, our formula actually results in a larger protection area than the drip line of the tree. And so we've already identified that, and that was something that was brought to us by the development community, is something that we need to provide a little bit of flexibility on, because it doesn't make sense for us to be prohibiting disturbance in a larger area if the tree can be protected in a smaller area. And then last but not least, next spring and summer, we'll be bringing forward several amendments related to implementing the Greater Downtown Plan and some of the recommendations that are there. So with that, Dylan, if you can go to the next slide, I'm going to let Brian take over and talk about conditional districts.
Just the refresher of what these districts are. Our code is organized where we have a base district and we have a conditional district. Some communities actually have a conditional district that just replaces zoning altogether. So you're writing a new zoning ordinance for every rezoning. Ours is structured differently. We have a base district, so everything in that district has to apply, and then you put a conditional district on top. Those specific conditions can include as part of the ordinance or as part of the approved site plan. Next slide. So as it's structured right now, only council can approve a change to a condition that is included in your ordinance. The city manager can authorize a minor change to the approved site plan. Those changes include what's listed on the right-hand side of the screen. I think a few of those are just outdated on their face. An increase in the size of public utilities. The city's no longer in the utility business, so that can be removed. So our idea is just to take a closer look at that list on the right and make updates as needed. Increase some of these numbers, decrease whatever council is comfortable with, to provide the flexibility that you would like to empower us with to make those administrative approvals. The two main questions that the city manager is forced to ask are, is it a major change based on that list, and then does that change have a significant impact on the abutting properties? And then we just use that list as the guiding guiding points to make that decision.
If I could, I think this is a great example to pick up on Councilman Waddell's comments. I think involving professionals outside of council and the planning commission does nothing but benefit the end product. And I think at the risk of dropping the hand grenade, the special use permit was a great example, I think, of that. It went back and forth, but I think at the end of the day, while not everyone agreed on the outcome, I think it was a good outcome because we involve people from outside that do this for a living, that do presentations and special use permits. And so I think the city got a better product because of that, even if everybody didn't agree about it. So on things like tree canopy, conditional districts, I think having, you want to call them focus groups or work sessions with the development community, but I also think with the professionals that present these things to us and to you, is a good idea. I mean, there are people who do that for a living that know those codes way better than anybody in here except for staff. So I think it's a benefit to get feedback. It doesn't mean you do what they want, but I think it means you get their perspective and understand where are the roadblocks, to Brian's point. You know, what of those may be obsolete, those major changes.
If you could just speak into your microphone, Mr. Lennon, I did just get a notice that they could not hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just asking Mr. Lennon to speak into his microphone because we got an alert that they couldn't hear him.
So I really don't want to repeat all that, but but I think it's important to include those in the community. Even on the special use permit, I know we had members of the public who had spoken at our meeting, you know, expressing concern about the special use permit and the process. And I think because of that, because of involving people from the outside, the city got a better product.
You know, with the statement that you're involving people outside, how successful are we with getting like diversity and everybody at the table? You know, getting like the data, the number of people that hear about the plans and the projects and stuff like that.
I'll answer that a couple different ways. I think, you know, and then everybody else please chime in. I think this actually goes back to a point that Councilman Rivenbark made at the beginning. I think the selection of planning commission members is really important. And I think it's also really important that the people that serve on the planning commission have experience in what they deal with on a monthly basis. I think there are oftentimes a lot of comments about diversifying membership, meaning, you know, someone who's just a public city resident with no experience in any of this being on the planning commission. I'm not sure that's in the best interest of anybody in the city. It's kind of like going to a divorce lawyer for brain surgery. So I think, yes, sir. But I think, but then I will say, I think the downtown plan, the greater downtown plan, is a great example of, we took turns and went for sit-downs with staff about the plan. And one of the things that really impressed me were the public outreach that occurred with that. And you all can speak to the numbers, but I was blown away at how much public input was taken for that, for the draft that we've now seen. So I think that's very good. I think, to be very candid, I've probably had no less than 20 people in my 5 years on the planning commission say, I'm coming to every meeting now, and I never see them again. So I think there are, people tend to get very active if it's something that impacts them directly, and then they're gone. So I think it's, I encourage it, but I think it's very difficult for people to stick with it, so to speak. That's my 2 cents. Commissioner Collier.
Councilman Barnett, when we were doing the special use permit, for example, there were 2 citizens, and they had been at several of our meetings, and very vocal at our meetings, probably at yours too. But they came into a kind of a joint meeting that we held on special use, and they asked questions. They wanted to understand. There was a lot of a myth about a special use permit all the way around, but they wanted to better understand it. And I think once we were able to discuss it with them, both of them, they may not have loved what we were talking about, but they at least listened to what we were talking about. And one man had been very vocal to the point of calling us bad names when he left the building that night. But I think both of them went away with a better understanding of what happens. And that's where I think, as Mr. Lennon said, having the background and the experience to understand it. Now it's the educational side, and I know Celeste has started the Wilmington 101 program, which to me is phenomenal. And I asked her a year ago, I said, I hope people come to it, and thank God they did, because it is one of those things that if we can't educate the folks in the public on what we're all doing, because most of them come in there, they don't have an understanding. They understand that it's near their house, they understand they might not like it, and they understand whatever social media told them, and there might be a traffic impact or a construction that's going to slow them down. But to understand the code itself, that's not there. So I agree with Commissioner Lennon in that it's there does need to be a level of experience to understand the code. There's two codes also. There's the land development code, and then there's the city code, and they have to marry up. Part of the time they don't mesh, and that's where we get a lot of the conflict that comes in very minute detail. The thing that was on the screen a minute ago, the R3 zoning that was brought, or adjustment that was brought up this past week to us, wonderful, wonderful thought, because it's taking something that when you write a code, you don't really think of it in this way. So in R3, it said, okay, you can have a house and an accessory dwelling unit. They can be both whatever size they want to be, all works great. But if you put a townhouse together, so just two buildings in one, it has to have 2,000 square feet of land area per building, which exceeds the 33 by 100 lots. So then you had to have two lots. So the way what was done or what presented, and hopefully you guys agree with, is take away that minimum land use area so that you can do townhomes. And it's still two uses, same as it is if it's an accessory dwelling. And also, it could take an existing house, and you could readapt or adaptive reuse a house. So from a standpoint of what we're facing with affordable housing, to me, it was a great thing. So, and J.C. Lyle brought it forward, and I thought it was fantastic. So I hope you do as well. But again, I hope we maintain the experience level on all of our boards, not just Planning Commission.
Commissioner Pollock?
I think just to add to that, Councilman Barnett, I think one of the biggest things that in my short time on this commission that I've seen, even as the membership has changed a little bit, but the one thing that I think we continually get better at and strive to be better at is to make sure we listen and hear what people say. Probably the special use permit, and John, that's a great example. When we had the little subgroup and we had a couple citizens, we had, land use attorney, we had, a group of people, and probably the biggest benefit of that discussion was them talking to each other and listening to each other. So it really didn't matter, what I or, any of the commissioners were there or the staff, but as they were listening to, didn't understand that. So as John said, that process of listening and helping others, listening and respecting everybody's opinion, yes, you're never going to come out with a perfect answer. It was probably the best answer that could come out of the exercise. So, and I know you guys, face that challenge every time you meet and the public comes, and it's hard, but you have to really pinch yourself, and you have to listen and respect what people are saying to you, and go from there. So I would just add, that little piece to the discussion as well.
Just on the kind of similar topic, I would point out at last Wednesday's meeting, I also publicly thank Ms. Thurston for this, but on the item that we had for the food banks, they actually, maybe 15 different municipalities that she compared, that was really useful. There were 15 different municipalities and how they dealt with food banks. And as I said, Wilmington's a unique city, but our zoning's not unique. So there are other players, and my point is getting out and getting feedback from not only all the residents we can, but what are other cities that have gone through similar things doing? And so that was very helpful, and it's great to see staff include those things.
You want to get into Greater Wilmington Plan. You want to talk about it? Is this kind of replacing the Vision 2020 plan?
I'm going to invite Travis Henley up, who is our manager for comprehensive planning and urban design. So the Greater Downtown Plan is actually replacing 3 plans. So the Vision 2020 for the kind of the central business district and waterfront area, as well as the north side and south side plans. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Travis.
Good morning. I guess, here we go. Next slide, please. Well, good morning. I believe all members of council and the commission have seen these slides before, but just, a reminder of what's included within the plan. Our plan is divided into 4 major themes. Firstly, local character. Really, this theme is answering who are we and what do we want to be? What do we want to look like? Next slide, Dylan. Our economy, we heard a lot about the overall functioning of our greater downtown economy with the emerging districts as places are changing rapidly. We heard a very large amount from the community about affordable housing, whether it's providing new housing units across our greater downtown or preserving housing units that already exist. Dylan. As everyone in this room probably knows, our community is very proud of our small businesses. We heard a great deal of, everything from, just, little things we can do to support our small business community to, outlawing all chain restaurants across all greater downtown or anything like that. There's a lot of pride around our small business community and identifying creative, innovative, hopefully high impact, low cost ways to support them. And then finally, thank you, Dylan. Mobility, of course, traffic getting around is front of mind for everyone. We heard a lot about how nice it is to be able to walk and bike and use anything other than a personal vehicle inside our greater downtown. This really is one of the few parts in our city where it is possible to not only walk and bike for recreation, but actually use it as a form of commuting to get to jobs, to get to services, access to goods, and so on and so forth. So a little about community engagement, back to Councilmember Barnett's point. We've had over 5,000 participants so far. That's roughly evenly split between online surveys or in-person surveys, and then participation at either workshops that we've held, or the vast majority have been at various pop-up events where people already are, they're already existing, attending some other event, and we're there to capture their input. But we're not done. We have a draft plan now. We hope to be sharing that this month. And the first thing we want to do is just say thank you. I mean, having over 5,000 folks participate is, for me, a pretty impressive number. And I've been through a number of these long-range planning efforts, and I can tell you that by many orders of magnitude, I've never been through a planning effort that's been this positive. The response from the community, just seeing us out, asking them questions, has been overwhelmingly positive. And it's, to me, I think it's our responsibility to say thank you for that. In addition to asking, did we get it right? Did we hear you correctly and translate what you told us into action? And 2, where do we get started? Again, this takes the form of surveys, but most importantly, going back into the community again and popping up where folks are already going to be and making sure that we're hearing them directly, that they don't have to travel, make any sort of special trip to see us. Dylan. So finally, just a little bit about our timeline here. Again, throughout the rest of the fall, basically through the holidays at the end of the year, we'll be out doing public engagement. Then we'll be bringing it forward for consideration, firstly by our steering committee and our implementation committee again. Then, of course, to Planning Commission for a final recommendation, and then onward to Council for final adoption. Implementation, of course, we don't want this plan to sit on a shelf. We've already identified some land development code amendments that will be coming as an initial step. We'll also say that based on the community input we've heard, a lot of the projects we're already working on are directly consistent with this plan. A great example of that is the Dawson and Wooster Streetscape project. I know that's a project that's been around for a long time, but it's really going to help move the needle and I think serve as a model for what we want to do across the rest of Greater Downtown and perhaps across the rest of the city. But certainly add Fifth Avenue to that list as well. And then finally on reporting, and I think this is where we're going to try something new that maybe hasn't been done before. So often when we're doing these long-range planning efforts, we come into a community, we get everybody excited. There's a renewed interest in the future of a community. We finish the plan, we say thank you to the community, and then we leave. And they don't see us again for 10, 15, 20 years in the case of the North Side plan. We can't do that again. Part of how you know that you're hearing from a range of every voice imaginable is that once you're done with the plan, you continue to tell the story. You continue doing engagement events, continue telling folks, okay, you told us this, we wrote it down in our plan here, and here's what we're doing about it. Part of that effort is, we have recommendations in the plan, and things may change years down the road. We may not be able to do that anymore. Something may have changed. But as long as we can tell that story and say, hey, we've investigated this route, it's not going to work, but here's what we're doing instead to still try to address the issue that you identified. So with that, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. I also want to thank the Planning Commission for those meetings. Those were very helpful that we've had over the last week and a half. And Linda, Brian, if you have anything more to add.
I think just to note that what we've given you on the table this morning, the handouts that you have will be part of that outreach. And so for each theme, you will see the recommended strategies and actions on one sheet, just so that we can easily convey that to the public. I think one of the other challenges that we've been looking at this is how do you bring a plan out to the public and make that easy for them to digest and not ask them to read 200 pages and still use what has been successful for us, which is going to events. So I will tell you that we did reach out to other communities, just like we look at what they're doing with ordinances, and said, how do you get comment on your draft plans? And everyone came back and said, well, we go out to pop-ups to get the feedback to do the plan, but then the draft plans, we really did not get an answer. So
a lot of the answers, or what I heard from other communities, was when you figure it out, please let us know. And I should say the most innovative thing I heard was very tongue-in-cheek from Alan Serkin, our favorite Council of Governments director, who said to call every person directly. So I'll try to get on that. But
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess my concern is I guess reaching my neighborhood, okay? And when you say pop-ups, tell me your 5 major pop-ups. Where did you go?
Well, to pick 5, the very first pop-up we did, which really sort of opened our eyes to how powerful this is, was Azalea Festival in 2024. We were there both days from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We had, I believe it was 700 folks participate at that event, and that's what opened our eyes to say, okay, this is the route we need to go. So some of the big ones that come to mind for me, Voyage, who you heard from earlier today, we were at their Halloween event last year. I think we had over 100 participate at that event. We were at a fall festival last fall in the Cargo District, where they had a number of other events going on, and they had a vendor fair that we were part of. There was Portia Hines Park. There's been a couple different events that we've participated in there. One that sticks out to me just from being really impactful is Liz Carbone, who used to work with Good Shepherd, is a good friend of mine, and we were invited to pop up at their grocery giveaway at Good Shepherd for a couple Wednesdays, and be there for part of their lunch hour as well, and get to talk to those folks. So there's a lot more. I think there's been nearly 50 pop-ups at this point, so I'm struggling to remember all of them.
Okay.
That's just a
That's fine.
snapshot.
All right. Thank you.
One thing that, just speaking for myself, when I reviewed the draft that jumped out at me is that, and this goes to the implementation and I think to educating the public, I think I made a joke, if you fully staffed the police department and made some pedestrian safety enhancements, you took care of about 60% of the concerns that were expressed in the public. There was an overall desire to feel safe. There was an overall concern about transportation, getting around, walking, et cetera. Those are obviously policy matters, but that's kind of what jumped out. But I do think one of the things that kills us when we get applicants or members of the public who say, we did all these plans and we heard all these great things were going to happen, and then when they never see anything. And so I think the way to guarantee public involvement is to start implementation of this as quickly as possible with the low-hanging fruit that's there.
I'm going to ask Travis to stay up there, and Dylan, if you could advance the slides to the comprehensive plan, because I think that is a nice way to kind of circle back to some of the comments earlier about the role of the Planning Commission. And doing the comprehensive plan is a fundamental role of this commission. And this is something, so our current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016. So as we've been working on the Greater Downtown Plan, we have known that the next major project for us is going to be updating the comprehensive plan. And in case I think everyone here knows this, but when you look at the trajectory of population projections, and so these are just for, this is for the Tri-County area in terms of how our population is projected to change between 2020 and 2060. So that line you see across the top, that is the total population increase for Brunswick, New Hanover, and Pender counties. And you can see that New Hanover is still going to continue to lead the way, but Brunswick County is very, very quickly following. So one of the things that we are looking at is understanding how much of that population increase is going to be absorbed by the city, and that's something that we need to be planning for as well, moving forward. And then in terms of looking at the comprehensive plan itself, we are proposing to include a transportation and mobility plan, which is going to be critical not only for our transportation system, but as we see that growth in the surrounding counties, understanding that traffic is coming to us. Just because they move to Brunswick County or Pender County does not mean they are not going to be using our roadways, coming over the bridge. I think, Mayor, I've heard you speak of that several times. We see those impacts, so that this growth, even though they don't live in the city limits, does not mean that we will not see the impacts of this overall growth in the city, and we need to.
The citizens of Wilmington, the ones that crow at us, they know better to say what they say, but they say, what are you going to do about all this traffic? You can go on the Memorial Bridge, 17 north, south coming in, 421 and 421 any morning from 7 o'clock on. And it's like a parking lot coming in. They don't pay one damn dime toward the upkeep of our infrastructure, not one dime. They buy gas, maybe, to go toward the state's fund, but it's a problem that we've got, and we're always going to have it. So what do you do? Educate the public. I don't even know why I brought that up, but it just galls me. It just goes all over me. I mean, you see all these cars coming in, and what's our growth, Bill? 1.2%?
What, 2?
2%? And people think it's 20%. They know better, but that's what they think.
And I think that's really one of the things that as we go out and look at this, it's understanding that, yes, the city's growing, but we are still going to feel the effects of the growth in the entire region. So you don't have to live in the city to have an impact on the city. And that's something that as we do our long-range plans, we need to be taking into account. The second new component that we are planning to add for the update to the comprehensive plan is a CAMA land use plan update. So the last land use plan that the city adopted was in 2006. In 2016, when the county did its first comprehensive plan, they did a CAMA plan, but left us as a big donut hole in the middle, leaving us with under the 2006 land use plan and policies. So since we're not part of the county's plan, we're going to go our own way on this, and we're going to include that in our comprehensive plan update. And as part of that, we are also looking at doing growth strategies for unincorporated areas. One of the things that you may notice when you get annexations or rezonings for associated with annexations, the initial zoning, is we don't have a growth strategies map that we can say this is identified at, as is what we're looking for, because our growth strategies maps, with few exceptions other than maybe transportation corridors, really stopped at the city boundaries in 2016. And that's where we said, here are areas of opportunity, here's what we think should happen here. And as we look forward and anticipate that we may see more and more annexations based on some of the conversations happening at the county, we think it's important that we are clear about what that means and what we're looking for from people looking to annex, and that we're kind of setting those expectations instead of it being just kind of open and, oh, the city doesn't have a plan for this area, so we can ask for whatever we want. So what we want to do as part of this new plan is extend that kind of growth strategy approach and say, okay, you may not be in the city today, but if you ever want to come into the city, here is what we are expecting from you, and this is what we are looking for in terms of land use.
Who would you be talking to?
This is really this is putting in terms of how to come up with those
Well, you just
recommendations,
said
or
this is what we're expecting of
So-
you. Who are you talking to?
so property owners who are looking to annex into the city, because right now when they look at our plans, there's nothing that says what type of land use or intensity that we have planned for that area. Whereas if you are doing a rezoning for a property that's within the city limits, we have a growth strategies map, and we can tell you, are you in a mixed use center area? Are you in an area of opportunity where we say these are the policies and the strategies that apply, and we give you, the Planning Commission and the council, an evaluation of those strategies whenever a rezoning comes forward to say, is this consistent with that?
Generally, all the satellite annexations or the voluntary annexations we've had have been over our development ordinance. I mean, that was the driving force. That's a fair statement, isn't it, Bill? And it's kind of piecemeal within 3 miles from the way the crow flies from our line. So that
Right.
kind of tells you, we got one coastline, there is none, north, west, okay. Generally, we just look and say, can we provide the services?
And I think what we're saying, our recommendation would be that we also say this is the type of development that you're looking for in that area, similar to what you look at for zonings within the city limits, that we have a land use plan and a strategy that says, if you're looking to do multi-unit housing, is it appropriate in this location or is it not?
But you wouldn't turn anybody down, would you?
That is not to be clear, we do not turn anyone down. That is the role of the council. This is just to provide guidance when they're looking to come in to say, does this align with the city's growth strategy? They can always ask for whatever zoning they want, and that is a decision that the council has to make.
Linda, when you evaluate the land use ordinances and the land use plan for the county in regards to when it kind of abuts the city, I'm sure you all have done that, have you not?
We typically, when someone comes in for annexation, the first place we usually start is.
I'm not talking about annexation. I'm just talking about when you just look at it, when it goes back to back.
Yes, that's something
How
that.
close are the ordinances to each other? How much do they mirror each other? Because I would imagine that when, I guess Mr. Clark was here and he was designing the plan for the county, and of course, when we were designing our plan at this, I guess about the same time, I'm sure that they were looking at our plan, we were looking possibly at their plan and how it impacts each other, because I know that we don't have the ETJ, and I know, and of course, the state's pulling a lot of the ETJs away from cities now. But don't y'all look at those plans to kind of get an idea of where we are in regards to density?
We do, and actually, the county is going through their comprehensive plan update right now, and Travis has been part of a technical committee that meets monthly. So he is familiar with the direction that they're going, understanding exactly what they're looking to do, which will then inform our process, and we will reciprocate as well. Because at the end of the day, people don't know where the city ends and where the county begins. I think there are a lot of folks, if you have a Wilmington address, I know our office deals with it every day, that will call in and ask what the rules are, and our staff is in the position of saying, you do not live within the city of Wilmington, you need to call New Hanover County, because they have a Wilmington postal address, so in their minds, they live here.
Unincorporated people try to vote in our municipal elections year after year. They don't know where they come from. It's
Yeah.
different, so
So,
we'd love to have them.
all right.
If I may, I think that touches on the broad issue of education of the public. If I hear R15 zoning one more time, I think my head will explode. And most people don't realize that that was just a blanket zoning that was put into place
Way back.
years ago. And the way to address the traffic, the people coming from Brunswick and Pender County to work in Wilmington, is to let more people live in Wilmington. And so I think that's my editorial, but I think it brings up the question of educating the public as to why these projects are beneficial and not detrimental. And that's, I think, I'm not speaking for the commission, but I think that's something that we'd all love to participate in some level, but really that's more of a policy issue, I think. Because it does get difficult when people have a vision of, okay, this project's going to result in this many trips. Well, it doesn't really, it's also going to help save some trips because it's not, 400 units in Brunswick County, 300 of which are going to drive across the bridge to come to work.
Yeah, this whole conversation's been around communication, and there's several of you have always heard me say that just when you think you've communicated enough, you're not even close. And, I know the mayor came and spoke to men's club that I belong to, and we had about 100 people in the room. And then, and Ms. Hawk, your predecessor, also came, and the prior police chief. So we had, a good bevy of people coming in the guise of communication. I had a room, about 100 people in a room, so that's a good number. Feedback I got was, God, I had no idea. Now, we all know that it's kind of incumbent upon us as citizens to go out and try to understand things too, but the only thing I would just keep saying is that, we just have to, I would recommend as a city, we just have to keep, challenging ourselves to communicate. You got to lead people to the trough to drink. You can't make them drink, but if you can get them to the trough, that's about 90% of the deal. And so I just, you just can't give up on that because that's the only way you're going to win hearts and minds.
It's kind of human nature for people to, if you don't believe it, look at your meetings, look at our meetings. We'll fill this place up, and when you get past public hearing number 2, and theirs is done, they're out the door. They could care less about the other 5 or 6 public hearings that you may or may not have. It's what's affecting them. So your point, communication is key, but it's, and I don't think you can have too much of it, but sometimes it's not what, we need to be more clear about the things that we do as a city. We've got to, the city is not in trouble. There's 1,000 cities out there across America that would give their eye teeth to trade place with Wilmington and our problems that they perceive we have. So we're doing a great job. Sometimes we beat ourselves up, and people will beat us up. But we got a great staff. We got great zoning ordinance. We got great ordinances, period. And we're constantly improving them. So I feel pretty good about the shape of the city.
You've got great tools to communicate.
Yeah.
You really do. At your fingertips to do. And like I say, I keep encouraging, more, and this is probably to city managers, more, poking those tools, make them work better for you. It's just assume people are not going to go do the due diligence you want them to do. So how do we help them do that due diligence? so that the public just becomes more informed. That, I mean, it's a challenge, it's a never-ending one, but you can't give up on it.
What would make the city and all the cities across North Carolina, we had the healthiest cities in the United States of America, financially and every other rule of measure, until they outlawed involuntary annexation. And I knew that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But when you look back at Wilmington, if we hadn't annexed in 95 and 98, we'd be in a world of hurt, folks. We wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the things that we've done because of that annexation.
Are there any other topics of interest to the council, commission? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would just, as we started this meeting, and I, for one, am really glad, I know you guys have been a little busy this morning and have things going on over the next few days, so I appreciate you all giving us the time to do this. But I guess what I'd like to walk away from here hearing is if there's any, when you look at the things that you have on your platter, all right, you've got, talked about comprehensive plan coming up, we've talked about downtown plan, you know, a lot of discussion around homelessness, et cetera, et cetera. Do you feel that we as a commission are doing what you need us to do, or are there other things that we could be doing under the guise of the, you know, when you look at our mission statement, long-range plans and policies? So I would just like, if we could take a couple minutes, I'd love to get some feedback if that's okay.
I mean, I'll go back to the LDC and the other plans that you guys are working on, certainly, but I mean, I kind of view y'all as subject matter experts, and appreciate the time that you put into, you know, rezonings that come across. But from a technical planning standpoint, on a regular basis, reviewing alongside staff what we have and making recommendations that then come before us, I think that certainly is a charge that I would support.
I've already stated mine. I think that the more involved the planning commission is with your mission statement, the better off it'll be. I mean, maybe there's some of us up here that don't fully understand exactly what the mission is, but you know, we see the results of what you all do, and the time that you put in it is phenomenal, and the degree of heat that you have to put up with, and I know it. I mean, I really appreciate the planning commission more than you'll ever know, and our planning staff. They get paid.
I too appreciate what you guys do. The one thing that I would hope that you can keep considering is making sure that you hear from all voices. Okay, and that always concerns me. And again, it's our responsibility as a citizen to kind of know what you're doing and get to you. But I just hope that you continue to hear from all sides of the community. All right, and appreciate your work.
I think that it would be a good idea if this was more planned, perhaps like not every quarter, but maybe sometime during the first 2 quarters of 26. I won't be here, but I mean, I think it'll be great to have it and have it planned on a regular rotation twice a year, just to sit down and air some stuff out.
Welcome to attend, though.
Huh?
Welcome to attend.
Yeah, okay. I'll be back there with a peanut gallery.
One thing I just wanted to say before we broke up, really 2 things, and one is just a personal plea. There's a lot of noise about apartments. Those are people's homes. Same way my house is my home. I would just sort of ask that be thought about as those projects come up. The other one, and I don't know what the fix is, but one of the things that stymies us a lot is character of the neighborhood. Can somebody tell me what that means? We really, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we struggle with that. Is the character of the neighborhood R15? Is it historic? What is it? And so I think as future plans are developed, to me, it'd be great if that word were minimized to a certain extent because it makes it really challenging because that's a diversity of opinion that we hear about. Because one person's vision of that character is very different from somebody else's.
Hey, John, let me chime in right there. I think that was you. I can't really see who was talking at the moment. But if you're talking about the character of the neighborhood or the community, I can see where the confusion could come in there. But if you have a bunch of single-family homes that have existed in the community for 30 years, then all of a sudden there's an apartment building, and there's a plan that tells the people in that community that this fits the makeup of the community. They don't agree, and so sometimes I can only speak for me. I don't agree either, and of course things have to evolve and change over time. But if we're telling the community what fits into the community, I mean, without their feedback, what is that? So I think that's what they mean. I'm for certain that's what I mean when I say it doesn't match.
Understood.
Thank you for this joint meeting, and if there's nothing else, we said that we would try to keep the time at 11 o'clock, and it's 11:12, so appreciate the frank discussions today, and thank you for all the work that you folks do, because I know y'all filter it before we see it, and you've done a tremendous job in doing that, and just want to say thank you. Okay?
Thank you for the opportunity.
We stand adjourned.